So I know immediately what most of you were thinking when they made this fight. Julio Cesar Chavez Jr, Jake Paul's toughest opponent, really? He's definitely much older, he's been consistently inconsistent, accused of not taking the sport seriously, he's failed drug tests, missed weight, got clowned by Anderson Silva, and half the time seems more interested in Instagram than in boxing gloves. On paper, the matchup feels like another one of boxing's weird modern exhibitions, a legacy name versus a social media disruptor. But before you write this off completely, I want you to do something for me. If you really need to, you can even think of this video like a Marvel what if. Not a fantasy, but a grounded alternate timeline, one where we actually pause and ask, what if Julio Cesar Chavez Jr takes this fight seriously? What if Jake Paul finally steps into the ring with someone who's lived and breathed boxing since childhood, who is nearly 20 years younger than Tyson was and has over 60 professional fights and knows how to break down a fighter from the body up? Whether you love Jake Paul or hate him, you can't deny he's smart about who he fights. Well, I mean, you can call him something else other than smart if you want to as well. But if this one goes wrong, it could really go wrong. And to understand how real the threat might be, we need to start rewinding back, and with a recent opponent they both had in common, Anderson Silva. The prime version of Chavez Jr was a monster of Mexican pressure who, with an iron chin, marched forwards and dug deep to his opponent's body, often big for the weight class with clubbing shots. He would read his opponent's probes and move forward, raising their guard with his lead hand before ripping brutal shots to the body with sound defense in close. Head-to-head, Chavez would keep on the pressure, throwing well on the brakes as well as in tight. Watch how he measures his lead hand, floats the jab, and then blasts a lead uppercut through the opponent's raised shield before dropping the right hook around the guard and then finally always digging back to the body. Once locked on an opponent, Chavez would often relentlessly drill the body just like a machine. He was always looking for the power shots to his opponent's body, even off his 1-2. He also had an iron chin to back it up and was no stranger to in-ring antics himself. In his prime, at times, he was an absolute nightmare. While pressuring, he waits, times the incoming shot, and counters with violence. Some of his bodywork was truly something to behold at times. And something else that often stood out in his game was the ability to move his head whilst moving forward to keep on the pressure. Watch here as he slips the jab while moving forward, rolls underneath staying close, and is always in position to inflict more damage.
Oh, good shot.
But towards the later half of his career, we also saw him develop into more of an elusive fighter at times, using patience and his jab to set up different offenses. But all of this was a long time ago. We will need to break down what threats he still possesses in just a moment. But first, let's see how he operated in his 2021 matchup with Anderson Silva, which was considered by many simply a spectacle fight. Anderson Silva is a mixed martial arts and UFC legend with one of the longest finishing and title defense streaks in the sport's history. His timing, precision, and shot selection made him a human weapon in MMA, with one of his greatest skill sets being his head movement. But of course, by the time he came to box Chavez Jr, he was a much older version of himself, not unlike Chavez. But it's important to see his form in this fight to understand his progression next in the lead up to fighting Jake Paul, and to see the complete difference in his approach and strategy, especially as most people are looking at the common matchup with Silva as being key in breaking down the fight with Paul. At this point in his career, Chavez Jr was 35 years old, past his athletic prime, but as we see in many other combat sports examples, he should still be able to compete at a high level. Having a height and reach disadvantage off the bat against an elusive striker like Silva did not make things easy, and against Paul he will be the same height but again have a 3-inch disadvantage to deal with. Early Chavez's approach was to lead with jabs to the body. This is a classic tool used to draw reactions, lower the opponent's guard, and set up shots upstairs later. Here he varies the level, jamming over Silva's southpaw lead right hand. These small adjustments in place help control the rhythm and keep Anderson guessing. Chavez himself though had his guard very high, instead of moving his head as we'd previously seen. Anderson wisely leads with his rear hand in this southpaw vs orthodox matchup and splits Junior's guard down the middle. Chavez though starts to set up and step through with a straight right of his own. Now these rear hands really dictated this fight, and it's something to note as it's something Chavez struggled with, but also something that will not be present for the fight against Paul, an orthodox fighter. More on this later. Instead of just going straight, Chavez lowers his level and blasts his lead hook around the high guard of Anderson. This is also an effective tool we'll see him use later. And in dealing with the southpaw lead hand and frames of Anderson, we saw Junior start to beat him over the top with his own speed. The straight down the middle also aims to disrupt Silva's rhythm and head movement. Then we saw some vintage Chavez in this fight. His pressure work forces Silva into the corner as Jr moves forward with a straight shot to keep Silva defensive. Then as Silva throws a right hook, Chavez rolls underneath but continues coming forward, committed to applying pressure, exactly how he needs to be effective against a top fighter and definitely something that can work to his advantage against Jake Paul. Again, look at this setup. Chavez pressures forward, rolls under the return and tries to sneak the body shots around Silva's guard. Going to the body against Jake Paul is perhaps Chavez's biggest chance. Jake has yet to have his conditioning and cardio truly tested, and working the inside takes away a lot of weapons for Paul as well. And in this fight with Anderson, he started to look really good when he put his punches together and moved forward.
Oh, nice! Chavez really bringing the action, being aggressive, starting everything right now.
Forcing Jake into positions like these against the ropes will be key to any victory. Chavez goes to the liver side, throwing the left hook. It's not heavy enough, but an accumulation could change the story. These next exchanges sum up the back and forth nature of this fight. Chavez lands a good body shot, then follows up with a clean right hand. But Silva takes it well and fires back with sharp counters. And then we start to see Silva turn up the volume and make things worrying for Chávez Jr fans. As Anderson blitzes forward, Chávez's immediate response is to move straight back in a straight line. And watch this fake. Silva twitches low with his leg and Chávez immediately shells up and backs off, giving up real estate and control of the exchanges. He tries to fire back here, but Silva holds his ground and Chávez isn't able to regain momentum or force Anderson onto the back foot. Anderson starts to win the footwork battle, something he's great at, takes the outside angle on Chávez's lead foot and from there fires his rear hand. And this final shot from Silva here, the right uppercut up the middle. It cuts straight through Chávez's high guard. Chávez is moving backwards, shelling, not moving his head at all things he doesn't want to do if he needs to beat Jake Paul. But that wasn't the Chávez Jr who fought for world titles. That wasn't the pressure-heavy, body-hunting middleweight champion who made opponents crumble. But that also wasn't his last fight. To get an understanding now of Jake Paul's game and his potential weaknesses and how Chávez might explore them, looking at the matchup with Anderson Silva is also a smart thing to do next. Both men had to deal with the southpaw tactics and they were both fairly recent fights for both men. Jake opened up with flicking double jabs. Light touches like this help disrupt the rhythm and reduce the chance of counter punches and effective head movement from the Spider. Here, Jake tries to jab the body, something we'll see Chávez make great use of later, but Anderson easily takes the outside angle with lead foot dominance. That footwork gives Silva control of the space and removes Jake's power line. This is almost identical, same jab attempt, same outside step from Anderson. He's reading it and beating Jake to the position. Jake switches to his lead hook instead of his jab, but there's no setup and it's easily read by Anderson. Now watch as the double jab comes out. Silva slips the second one clean and counters. He steps offline with his right foot, angling perfectly before returning fire down the middle. And then when Anderson pressures Jake here, you can see Jake retreat into the corner and immediately go into the clinch. This becomes a common pattern when he's crowded and he's not comfortable fighting on the inside space and wants distance to wind up his overhand. Inside, Jake eats a big uppercut. He frames off and tries to reset, but extending his lead hand here is also something that Jr could take advantage of, with that being his reaction in close. Now Jake's in full shell, just retreating into the ropes. These are the moments where pressure really shuts his game down. And now Silva doesn't even need to throw, he just walks forward feeling he can control and own the range. The pressure alone is enough to collapse the space and take away Jake's movement. This is one of Jake's better responses, as he plants his feet and throws the overhand right. Anderson steps directly in front of it. It lands because Silva doesn't take that outside angle this time, they are toe to toe, but it's also a well-timed fast shot from Jake that all his opponents have to watch out for. Here we see Silva again trying to close the space. Jake begins to exit left, but as Silva cuts the angle and throws to the body, Jake wisely escapes out the other side instead. But again, watch Silva here. He's switched stance, now measuring with the left hand and throws a hard right cross across it. The framing hand helps blind and control Jake's head movement, and the right hand lands as he's trying to exit. Again, Paul doesn't have a lot of threats when he's forced against the ropes and in these situations. Silva now uses his lead hand to track Jake along the ropes and close the space, tapping the body. Then he closes that completely with his shoulder shield to cover and still gauge range. But as the fight wears on and Silva starts to slow and get more confident, we see nice work from Jake. He jabs twice. Silva ducks under the second, but it's the third jab that sets the trap. Not unlike when Silva was KO'd by Chris Weidman, he anticipates incorrectly and pulls away. Jake fires the right hand behind it and catches him, as he's already committed and can no longer move his head any further. And now you'll notice Silva's tired. He's not cutting angles anymore. Jake moves forward even while giving up lead foot positioning, missing to the body but starts following up and lets the hands go, and it's his work rate against the older man that starts to shift the fight. Still, Jake's not always perfect with a lot of his basics as well. He misses a big on this lead hook here, and the right hand is way off his chin, and he pays for it with a clean counter. Silva still pressures, and there's no real chase though. He's slowing down, which gives Jake even more time to operate. Jake fires in combination, and Silva just stops countering. He's just slipping and riding the punches, just looking to avoid damage. And at the end of this round, Silva though continues to crowd Jake. There aren't huge shots, but the control is still there, as is opportunity. And here's where you really start to see similarities with how Chavez Jr fought Silva. Anderson, now tired, is just covering up, moving straight back and giving his opponent opportunities to string attacks together. This jab from Silva pushes Jake offline, then a straight left lands clean and Jake turns away. It's not a damaging moment as Silva's follow-up shot doesn't have impact, but again, it's these small windows that Chavez Jr will absolutely need to replicate and accumulate if he wants to find success. And in close again here, Jake takes multiple shots without a response. An uppercut slips through, followed by a tight right hook as Silva exits. But Jake finds a second wind, throwing a fake jab, flicking two more, then digging hard to the body. He adds an outside hook and a straight right down the middle. Silva tries to roll with it, but the volume is still there. And then while under pressure, Jake just loads up on his right hand. Silva reads it, rolls under and advances. These are the exact moments Chavez Jr must take advantage of. Jake's offense commits him, and if you can survive the first wave, you can counter big, all for an extended time. Another great combination from Jake here though. And these ultimately score him the knockdown against the former UFC champion. Jake flashes a jab to the body, then a left hook. He adjusts his path to set up the right hand, and just as Silva throws back, Jake beats him to it and lands clean. Jake took the unanimous decision in that fight, and he beat Anderson with his combination punching and work rate towards the end of the fight. Since then though, Paul has fought another 6 times, but arguably against less and less credentialed opponents, until he hit Tyson, who was more credentialed in boxing but was of course also 58. In fact, the only other professional boxer Jake Paul fought was Tommy Fury, and he lost a unanimous decision to him. Chavez, however, has also looked markedly better since the loss to Anderson Silva. His most recent performance happened last year at 39 years old and taking on another MMA fighter, Uriah Hall. Now, Hall actually beat Anderson Silva in MMA towards the end of his career, but it's hard to pretend that he's much of an accomplished boxer, being a Tiger Shulman striker with devastating kicks and typically not a lot of volume with his hands, even in MMA. Still, whether he measures up physically to Jake Paul is another story. Uriah Hall was absolutely in shape and physically very fit when going up against Chavez, but we saw Junior pull out some stuff that might just foreshadow success against Paul. Early in the rounds, instead of trying to march forward, Chavez establishes his jab. He mixes levels, jab into the body this time. Uriah's response is with his right hand. Now watch this. Chavez starts the jab motion low, left hand by the hip. Uriah sees a body jab coming and drops his right, but Chavez times it and loops his left hook around the outside. It only took him 2 minutes to find this window of attack. And this is a sequence he constantly looks for and out-times Uriah with. It's almost an automatic response for Uriah to drop that right hand low, opening up his head. When Uriah switches to southpaw, it's a different battle with the lead hand, similar to the Silva fight. And when that happens, Chavez doesn't really engage when he's like this. But as soon as he goes back to orthodox, Chavez returns to that jab to body pattern into his left hook. This is a great example of Chavez exploiting that reaction. He changes levels, draws the frame, then passes his own head past Uriah's lead hand entirely. And we saw that Chavez Jr, at least in this fight for moments, he still had the speed to get in and out and work away at the body. Watch this combo here. These are exactly what he'll need to chain together to break down the gas tank of Jake. Lead hook to the body, right hook behind it, then a hook up top. And of course, how many of these can he output around though is still questionable. We're at the halfway point now, and this is where Chavez has to be cautious. His jab to the body is still there, but his hands are low and the exit is slower. And we also see Chavez starting to back up into the corner, covering up. He's static here, but to give credit to Chavez in this fight, he comes out fast in round 5, returning to his strength with tight body combinations. Uriah's walking him down though, and Chavez just doesn't have the power, or it seems the energy, to stop that forward pressure. His shots are accurate, but they aren't deterrents, and Jake Paul has already fought bigger men. Chavez finds himself stuck against the ropes, trying to roll shots but not creating new angles and absorbing rather than dictating. But he wasn't out of it yet and went back to work old school Chavez. Watch how he flashes the lead hand, no real intent to land, then immediately follows with a dig to the body. If he can maintain this kind of output, he should find success here against Jake Paul. And they even went toe-to-toe in the closing moments of this fight, and Chavez Jr. was still digging to the body. It is entirely unclear though what version of Chavez Jr. will show up in this fight. Certainly there is more money and more recognition on the line against Jake Paul than there is against Uriah Hall, and in fact that win did all he needed to set him up against the problem child. We've seen flashes of the kind of game plan and elite boxing skills that could give Paul all kinds of problems, and if the work rate and gas tank of Jr. holds out, he could test the cardio of Paul and take him to deep waters that he's not had to fight out of before. But why don't you guys let me know what you think in the comments down below. The odds are certainly stacked against Chavez for a number of reasons, but if he can find the will to win, he might just end up stealing the show.